Welcome to AVP's Orville Chats. My name is AVP. Stay tuned for today's episode. Episode 4. All original content, or has some of it been borrowed? What's original and what's not? Hi guys, my name is AVP and welcome to today's episode. Today's episode is going to be discussing whether or not the Orville series is all original content or is some of it borrowed from other sources. So, in case you really don't want to stay for the entire episode, I'll give you a quick little spoiler alert. I believe that the Orville series has got a little bit of both of original content and also some content that may borrow from other sources. So, without further ado, here is today's episode. So, when we went back to the pilot episode, we saw Ed in Admiral Halsey's office, where he sees a bowl of white objects that we assume could be mints. But Admiral Halsey reveals that they're not mints as Ed originally thinks that they are, which Ed promptly spits out. He finds out it's a marble instead. I actually believe that this could be a reference to Seth MacFarlane's project on Ted 2, where Ted is looking for an attorney and they go to the different law firms, and I believe it's Ted who says, "Hey, can I get some of those mints or candy that's on the bowl?" And it turns out that the different law firms had an intern that didn't put those items away. And so I think that's a little subtle reference to that, in my honest opinion. Because, like I said, it's original, but it's not so original either, because Ed actually puts one of those items into his mouth, and then he spits it and goes, like, forget it, I don't want it after all. If it's a marble, nope, nope. Also, there's another thing that a lot of us fans have speculated over the years. Who exactly is Isaac based off of? Now, we all know that Isaac is an artificial intelligence kind of robot kind of species. Basically, we've had all sorts of theories. We've had everything from the robots from Buck Rogers in the 25th century. We've had Star Wars theories. We've also had some crazy ideas, some silly ideas like Rosie from the Jetsons series. But I have a little theory of my own, actually, which a lot of people say, oh yeah, I hadn't thought about that. In the movie Hellboy 2, The Golden Army, we have a robot kind of creature who is also an alien of sorts, and his name is Dr. Klaus. Now, in case you didn't know, Dr. Klaus is voiced by none other than Seth MacFarlane himself. I believe that this character, Klaus, may be a subtle reference to Isaac. And basically, Isaac is subtly based off of this character because Isaac wants to be human, but he also wants to show that he can be a bit of a pain in the butt, showing that, hey, I got a superior intelligence, I know more than you are, I'm smarter than you are, don't underestimate me. So, like I said, I think that that's a little subtle reference to that particular character. So, like I said, that's a little bit of an original idea, but it's also mixed with some not so original ideas. Who knows? Isaac could be based off of many different characters, not just one. Because, like I said, Isaac could be based off even Data from the Star Trek The Next Generation series, which Seth MacFarlane is a fan of, and some of us are fans of, so who knows? The inspiration for these kind of stories and ideas could come from almost anywhere. So let's keep this in mind, that basically Seth MacFarlane has certain ideas that are original, but certain ideas that are not so original. And like I said, these are two ideas that are my own personal theory as to why they're that way. So, like I said, they don't belong to anyone else except me, AVP. I have those two theories, and yes, you can borrow them, but make sure you credit me when you do that. Okay, so here's another thing that we realized too, is that in the book of The World According to the Orville, we see that there's a lot of sketches in this book, there's a lot of drawings, there's a lot of behind the scenes information about the different aliens, there's information about the spaceships, there's also information about behind the scenes footage. With some of these kind of things, I can't exactly describe it completely because I know you can't actually see the book, but if you do get a chance to get a copy of the book, you'll see what I'm talking about. But let me try to give you a visual picture for those of you who do not have a copy of this book. This book basically is a behind the scenes look of a lot of what takes place in season 1. And basically, we see that there's some sketches in there from Seth MacFarlane of the Krill ships. There's information about Isaac. There's information about the scanners that the different crew members use when they're on the alien planets. There's also information about some of the spaceships that are non-Krill related. There's also information about the shuttle. Now keep in mind, some of these are actually original material that came from Seth MacFarlane, and I'm sure he also got reference material from other people in his cast and crew saying, hey, what about this? What about that? Because I believe that Penny Gerald Johnson, who plays Dr. Claire Finn, some of the things that are about her are very similar to her character of Claire. For instance, Claire is born and from Baltimore, Maryland. Penny herself is actually from there as well. Interesting. So, who knows? With these source materials, they could come from almost anywhere. I myself am a writer, and I do a lot of writing. And I know that a lot of times you can get inspiration from almost anywhere. I mean, it could come from a dream, it could come from a commercial, it could come from a story you read, it comes from music, it could come from anywhere. And like I said, as long as you don't take the whole quote or the whole story word for word and try to call it your own, that's perfectly fine. That's not plagiarism. Plagiarism would be where I'm taking the whole story of, say, Romeo and Juliet, but I change it a little bit, saying, oh, that's not Romeo, that's Romo, and that's Julie. See, it sounds so similar to Romeo and Juliet that it's kind of like, wait a minute, you're stealing that from somebody else. You're stealing that from so-called Shakespeare. So, like I said, I think Seth MacFarlane is very, very careful with what he does, and also the other people that write for the episodes, that they make sure that their source material is not so similar, that they try to tweak it a little bit where it seems altered and is not as similar to the original source material without feeling like, okay, they plagiarized this, they plagiarized that. So that's my personal theory on the matter. So here's the thing. I may have a lot of ideas for different things, including these podcast episodes, videos that I do online, and I get a lot of feedback from you guys in the community. You guys tell me, hey, this is a very good idea, or no, that's not such a good idea. There's certain topics that I'm definitely not going to discuss on this podcast because, for one thing, it's a little controversial, and we don't want to deal with controversy here. We want to make this a very lighthearted environment. We want people to feel like they're welcome and invited without feeling like, I deal enough of this drama in the real world. Why do I need to hear this to escape the reality? So, like I said, certain subjects I will not be discussing at all. But here's the thing. I go over a lot of material with you guys before I finalize anything. And a lot of times you guys are very supportive of me and say, oh, that's a really great idea. I had not thought about that. So like I said, I think it's best if you do talk to people and find out what do they enjoy, what do they not enjoy. And when you do that kind of thing, then you come up with original ideas. And who knows, if it's a borrowed idea, it's not so borrowed where it feels like you've stolen the idea. I hope that makes sense what I'm trying to say. So I think that's the same thing that's true for Seth MacFarlane in this series that he's doing with Orville, that he probably talks to his cast and crew members, and who knows, he may even talk to people in his real life that are not involved with the series, and they can probably say, hey, what about this? Have you thought about that? Because here's the thing, you never know what's going to strike you for inspiration. It could be anything. I mean, I myself have got notebooks, and I mean notebooks, at least 10 notebooks full of different material, of different things that I have compiled into different stories. Now, not every single story is going to be made onto the big screen or even the small screen, and some of it may be just a small little short story that I wrote for the fun of writing it. But here's the thing. As long as I don't steal it from the whole original source, then I'm free to do with that. And like I said, it's okay to borrow ideas from other people as long as you credit them. That's why I always tell you guys, thank you so much for your feedback. You guys are the ones that are helping me create this podcast. You guys are telling me straight up, hey, I like what you're talking about. I enjoy your speaking voice. I enjoy the topics that you're discussing. And you know what? I appreciate that feedback. It really means a lot to me, because I don't want to borrow ideas from others and say, oh, well, here's my podcast, and it's a mirror opposite or a mirror identical thing of someone else's material. No. Every single podcast that I have done so far has been all my original content. It's no one else's, just my own. I basically will ask you guys, hey, what do you guys think about this topic idea? Or what do you think about that topic idea? Or do you think I should discuss this? Or do you think I should not discuss this? Like I said, I can borrow sources from anywhere, and I always credit you guys. I may not mention you by name, but I'm sure when you hear these little credit and little snippets, you know that I'm referring to you. I mean, if you want me to refer to you, I'll happily mention you in my credits. I'll definitely mention you for sure, because one of the things that I did on my Twitter is I did a poll, and I asked you guys, hey, I really, really want to do this podcast, but I really, really need an announcer to do my video intros. And you guys told me straight up, for the podcast, why don't you do it yourself? And you know what? I'm doing it myself. I took your guys' feedback and I made it my own. Like I said, there's so many places where you can get source material. Like I said, the universe is literally our limit because you never know what's going to inspire you. It could be anything. It could be even a TV commercial. I mean, I myself sometimes when I sleep and I can remember it and I have a very vivid dream that's very detailed and I think this would make a good story idea, I immediately write it down. As a writer, I know the importance of always keeping writing material around because, like I said, you never know what's going to inspire you. For one person, it may not be an inspiration. For another person, it may be. Some of us, we never know what's going to come about, and we may just write down that one little bit of a idea on a scrap of piece of paper, and who knows, that idea may make it to a bestseller. I think about the writers who wrote the song Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And here's the thing, the people who wrote that beloved song actually wrote it outside of a pharmacy, and I believe, if I remember correctly, the reason why they came up with the idea is because they said, you know what, this girl is a farm girl, and the only source of color that this girl would probably see in her life would probably come from a rainbow, because everything else is probably drab, dull. So they came up with the idea, you know what about rainbows? Just like some of these Christmas songs. One of them was actually written in the middle of the heat wave, and you know what? They came up with an idea about a Christmas song to cool off, to not think about the heat so much. So like I said, you never know what's going to inspire you to come up with an idea, and I think that's the same thing that's true with our series creator, Seth MacFarlane, that he basically gets inspiration from almost anywhere. He could get it from his real life, he could get it from friends, he could get it from crew members, he could even get it from cast members themselves. They could say, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? I mean, like I said, the universe is literally our limit. We never know what's going to inspire us. We never know what's going to make us go, would this make a good story idea? Would this make a good character name? I mean, Seth MacFarlane recently did an interview with Jessica Sazoa, I believe that's how you pronounce her name, the one that plays Tala, and she asked him the question, how did you come up with my character's name, Tala? And he revealed to her, which, in case you guys didn't know, Seth MacFarlane reveals that the name came from the shirts he wears, and the size inside of it said Tala. In case you didn't know, Tala is actually a Spanish word for the word tall. So, like I said, that was just basically a plain, simple label, and it had the word Talla. And there was an idea for a character name. And guess what? He uses that as her name. So that's Tala was born, all from a t-shirt label that Seth MacFarlane had. So like I said, we never know what's going to inspire us to come up with ideas. Like I said, there's certain ideas that it will come to my mind. I'll discuss it with you guys and you'll say, oh yeah, that's a really good idea, or that's not a really good idea. Don't do that one. Like I said, I always try to run things over to come up with fresh, original ideas that people probably have not thought of. This idea came to my mind because I said, you know what? Some of us may be thinking, is it copyrighted? Is it not copyrighted? what's borrowed, what's not borrowed, what's in between, everything in between. So basically, in conclusion, I'm trying to say is that I believe that the Orville series does have a lot of original ideas for certain things, but certain things may be borrowed from other sources. It's just we have to look for those little nuggets. I'm still going to do an episode one day in the future, which you guys can help me out with, which I would really, really appreciate, is if you guys can find little nuggets and little Easter eggs, so to speak, of the different things that you may have seen in the series and think, you know what, is this a reference to something else? Is this a reference to something else that I hadn't thought of? I mean, when I was talking to someone the other day and I said, was there anything you observed in the show? And they came up with the Kermit the Frog on Seth's desk. And then she also pointed out that there's a little flight of the original airplane that the Wright brothers came up with, and that's a nice little source material because the series is called Orville after one of the Wright brothers. So who knows, you never know what's going to be a source material and what's not. But like I said, with these little Easter eggs, I'm going to need you guys to give me your input. What's something that you've seen in the series? It could be, like I said, a very small little thing. It doesn't have to be a big major thing. It could be something as simple as the Kermit the Frog. Or it could be something like you saw Bortus saying something. Or maybe even the clip when Clyden is watching The Sound of Music. Maybe you felt like it was a reference to something else that you had seen. Who knows? The sky, or the universe in this case, is our limit because, like I said, there's so many source materials out there. We never know where those source materials are going to come from. But I really, really hope you guys appreciate this insight that I was able to give you guys to let you know, yes, Orville is original in many ways, but in many ways, there's certain ideas that may not be so original. It may be borrowed from another source, but it's slightly tweaked a little bitty bit just to make it original enough where it doesn't feel like it's being borrowed, it's not coming from another source material. That way it feels like it's still original and fresh in our minds. I hope that makes sense what I'm saying, because like I said, it is original, but some of the material may be borrowed from other sources. It just has been slightly modified just to fit the series. That way it doesn't feel like it's been plagiarized or stolen from another source. So I hope you guys appreciate this episode that we just wrapped up. And for the next episode, which will be episode 5, which, wow, that does not seem possible, but we are literally on episode 5. And the next one is going to be talking about the memorable cast and even some of the memorable guest stars that we've gotten, including some of the memorable guest star directors. Please keep in mind that this is all from the IMDb website and Wikipedia sites that give me this information, and also some of it's all from my head that I remember about these guest stars. And like I said, I will be discussing that in episode 5, which, wow, it's hard to believe that we are now coming up on episode 5. But I really appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to this episode. I really, really enjoyed sharing my insight with all of you. And so this is your Orville sister, Orville fan, Orville friend, and your community team member, AVP, signing off until next time. Hope you enjoyed the AVP's Orville Chats, and I will see you guys the next time we do another episode, which hopefully will be soon, but we will have to wait and see how scheduling goes. But hope you guys enjoyed this little insight about how the Orville series is original, but it also has some material that is slightly tweaked and modified to fit where it doesn't feel so borrowed. All right, you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you next time. This is AVP signing off. Bye.